Hey everyone, this week I've been driving this 2023 Infiniti QX50. I've actually already done a review of this vehicle. I posted it a couple months ago, I think. But either way, rather than do another review, I thought we'd take this opportunity to talk high level about the compact luxury SUV segment as a whole. So let's do a quick little walk around of this one. High level, speak to features not necessarily of the QX50, but rather of the segment as a whole. And then I'm going to try to rapid fire run down the list of every compact luxury SUV on the market and give like 2 or 3, probably more sentences of my thoughts on that vehicle to hopefully just kind of bring the entire segment to top of mind for anyone who might be considering a compact luxury SUV, which this is one of the hottest segments in the car world. So I imagine there are a lot of people out there in that situation. So like I just said, the compact luxury SUV segment is very competitive right now. This is the vehicle of choice for a lot of new car buyers. What you're looking at here, the Infiniti QX50, is pretty representative of the heart of the segment. This vehicle, it's almost generic. There's really nothing offensive about it, nor is there anything too exciting about it. As equipped, this one's about $53,000. I think it's pretty sharp looking. That's subjective. Most of these vehicles make an effort to elevate themselves via styling. So like you can see on this one, the hood is certainly swoopy. This one has the sport package, or I think sport's a trim level in this case, but either way, that gets you the big wheels with black styling elements in them, gets you a black grille, gets you black on the roof rails. So sporty styling packages are available pretty much across the board as far as these vehicles go. One thing I should mention, compact SUVs have grown over the years. So if your frame of reference is 10 or 15 years ago, maybe you haven't bought a new car in 8 years, I think for most people, compact is the right size. That used to mean small, but these days it means just about right. So take a look in the cargo area here. Again, cargo area on the QX50 is representative of pretty much what you get across the board. Of course, things vary a couple feet here and there, but that's about the amount of space you get. This one's handy. Got some pull downs so you can put the second row down. And again, for most people, for the greatest number of shoppers, this size is about right. So with a compact luxury SUV, rather than just like a regular SUV like a RAV4 or Nissan Rogue, you get leather on the dashboard. The steering wheel is generally leather wrapped on all trim levels. Leather seating is in most cases standard, maybe even in all cases. And then you just get a lot of kind of like brushed trim elements. It's certainly elevated, this cabin is, relative to, say, a comparable Nissan Rogue. Other things that you might not realize right away is usually get thicker glass, softer seats, squishier door panels, just overall nicer materials. Things are usually quieter, things usually ride a little bit better. Big panoramic sunroofs are common in this segment. Not a ton of space in the second row, but enough that if you wanted to take 4 people or yourself and 3 other people on a road trip, you can get away with that. Everyone would remain pretty comfortable still. Here's the window sticker on this one. So it's, like I said, pretty average, almost generic. Fuel economy is okay. It uses a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine making 268 horsepower, which is, again, like kind of right at the middle, pretty average. And as equipped, it costs right under $53,000, and you're looking at about 25 mpg combined. Okay, now let's talk about this segment as a whole. I have a list here that I made in Microsoft Excel and printed out, folded up, cut up, and taped together so that I can stick right here to make sure that I don't forget anything, because especially in this segment, there are a lot of options. So I've broken this list up by like country of origin, because that's kind of how I segment things in my head. I think the different manufacturers by country kind of tend to do things similarly. They have similar philosophies. So let's start with the Americans. And honestly, I've driven like maybe a little bit more than maybe a little bit more than half the vehicles on this list, so I can speak to some better than others. Let's start with the Americans, though. You've got the Buick Envision, which I'm pretty sure is made in China. It's pretty mainstream. It's pretty much the most entry-level compact luxury SUV, but if you're looking to not spend a lot, maybe start with something like the Buick Envision. You've also got the Cadillac XT5. I've not driven the XT5, but I've driven a couple of modern Cadillacs, and I don't find them to be very inspired. But again, if you want to save a couple bucks, okay. There's also the Lincoln Corsair, which shares its platform and general architecture with the Ford Escape. I'd certainly like to drive one. Lincoln's been doing some cool things. Their designs these days feel kind of elevated, but again, probably not the most premium option on this list. Moving on, let's talk about the Japanese offerings. Those are certainly the top sellers. We'll start with this vehicle, the Infiniti QX50. Infinity's compact SUV previous generation was built on a rear-wheel drive platform, so it was kind of fun to drive. At least I assume. I've not driven it, but this one, their new one, is built on a front-wheel drive platform shared with like the Altima. That's a mainstream mid-size sedan. So I'm not saying that's not bad, but it's just noteworthy. This vehicle leans more toward efficiency. It's probably more appealing to more people just because that architecture is a little bit more familiar, probably drives and behaves a little bit differently. If you don't get all-wheel drive, it's front-wheel drive. That's more familiar, better in the snow, and it's probably cheaper to make, and probably not necessarily cheaper to buy. But overall, this vehicle, it's almost generic, like I've been saying. It's not particularly great in any area, but I don't find it offensive anywhere as well. There's nothing really to criticize about the interior. I just don't love the infotainment system. Infiniti is the only company that uses this weird two-tiered system, and frankly, it needs to go away. It's time for it to go away. There's really no benefit to this, but yeah, that's the QX50. If you can find one of these with a few $1,000s off, especially compared to one of its competitors, then I don't think it's a bad buy at all. And I think anyone who buys one of these is probably going to be content. Just might not scratch the itch for someone looking for something sporty. And on that note, I have to run into the post office, so I will be right back. Okay, so as for the other Japanese luxury SUVs, there are 2.5, call it. So the Acura RDX, that has been on the market for a few years now. I liked it when I reviewed it. Interior's really sharp. I think anyone who's kind of into the Japanese brands and likes modern design, it's just a really sharp interior. I like that. I think the exterior is as well. There's really nothing else too remarkable about it. Its infotainment system is a little mediocre as well. It uses a trackpad. It's not a touch screen. So I think the RDX is a fine option. The other one, and the one I like the most out of this group, is the new Lexus NX. I've reviewed one of those. Lexus, they do really well in terms of resale value. Their reliability is generally perceived to be really good. Their cars really seldom offend people. The new NX has a lot of great available powertrains. You can get it with a really basic 4-cylinder. You can get it with a turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes similar power to this one. I believe there's a hybrid, and then there's also a plug-in hybrid. That's a pretty impressive vehicle across the board. I think on this list, out of this list, that is the vehicle that will appeal to the greatest number of people. That may or may not be you, but in terms of statistics and numbers, I think that has the most appeal out of this whole segment. And the other nice thing is Lexus finally fixed its infotainment system, so it's now got a pretty intuitive touchscreen infotainment system. Previous generations of Lexus vehicles used a really finicky and frustrating trackpad-based system that turned a lot of people away. Okay, the final so-called luxury SUV from the Japanese brands, the Mazda CX-50. That's why I said there are 3.5 vehicles on this list, because you can kind of look at Mazda as a luxury manufacturer, and you can kind of look at it as mainstream. Its pricing is pretty mainstream, but its interiors and its designs are borderline luxury. So anyone looking for value, I think, will find a lot to like about the new Mazda CX-50. You find a lot to like about the old CX-5, which is also in production still. So CX-50, sharp designs, maybe not the latest tech or powertrains or features, but certainly a choice that I think a lot of people would be happy with. Okay, moving on, the Korean entry, the Genesis GV70. I think that's probably the best vehicle in this segment. It uses a rear-wheel drive kind of performance leaning platform. Genesis has a killer infotainment system. It's got really sharp design, great powertrains. They're not the most efficient. I think that's probably the lone drawback. But overall, Genesis, it's transitioning from having to be a value-oriented luxury brand into being a full-blown luxury brand, which for you, the consumer, means their prices are going up, but they're backing it up with a killer product. And you don't see tons of them on the road. The dealer network is not, I guess, isn't huge. I guess they're still dealing out of Hyundai dealerships. But the GV70 is by far the best balance of refinement, excitement, and value on this list. Anyway, moving on, the British options. There are 3 Land Rover products and then a Jaguar. You've got the Land Rover Discovery Sport. I've never driven it. I don't really know much about it other than the fact that it's really just a Land Rover and branding only. If you're into Land Rovers and you want a small SUV with not a lot of off-road capability, then sure. Same goes for the Range Rover Evoque. It's offered as a more premium entry in this already premium segment. If you like the way it looks, great. Same goes for the Range Rover Velar, which I thought was a mid-size option. I think it would make more sense for it to be a mid-size, but I guess it's categorized as a compact. So pretty similar to the Evoque. You'll spend a lot of money though for a Velar compared to some other vehicles on this list with similar equipment. And then you've got the Jaguar F-Pace, which is built on the same platform as the Velar. Nothing too noteworthy there, although I've not driven the vehicle and I really don't know a whole lot about it. But Jaguar these days is kind of a tough sell, especially given all the other options on this list. The Swedish entry, the Volvo XC60. I drove one of those years back. I really like Volvo's design. Well, it's Scandinavian design. What's not to love? It's kind of like walking through an IKEA store. Hopefully the quality of the XC60 is better than IKEA furniture. Volvo has changed a lot over the years, especially recently. They're now owned by Geely, which is a Chinese company, so I think some of the brand has remained, but I think at its core, the ethos of the brand is certainly changing. They're doing a lot of electrification these days. They're kind of an outlier on this list. Anyway, moving on, the Italian option, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I made a video review of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio, which uses a 6-cylinder engine of a Ferrari motor. The title of that video is the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is a car for psychopaths, and well, you kind of have to be a psychopath to buy any Alfa Romeo. They're not known to be of very high quality. Interior quality that I experienced was not good. If you want something insanely, frighteningly, painfully fast, then the Stelvio Quadrifoglio is certainly an option that'll check that box. But the Stelvio in the Alfa Romeo brand as a whole these days has a lot of shortcomings. And then beyond that, we have the German entries, of which there are 5, 3 kind of core offerings. You've got the Audi Q5, that's a stalwart. Everyone knows the Q5. I've reviewed one. I worked for Audi of America for a minute, and I've always enjoyed their designs. I think their stuff is relatively intuitive. It's a fine option. I don't think many people are disappointed in their Q5s. Same goes for the BMW X3 and X4. The X4 is the coupe version. I should add, there's a coupe version of this vehicle as well, the QX55. The coupe versions are, I think, kind of silly. They just have smaller, slopier roofs, which gives them smaller cargo areas, which means they can haul less and do less. So, but anyway, the BMW X3, it's built on a rear-wheel drive platform, which is kind of fun. It scratches the performance itch more than a lot of the other vehicles on this list that are built on front-wheel drive architectures, like the Acura RDX, say. And there's a lot of different trim levels and powertrains available with the X3 that you can scratch really almost any type of itch with that vehicle. The same goes for the Mercedes-Benz GLC. That's built on the rear-wheel drive sedan platform that Mercedes uses to compete with BMW's rear-wheel drive sedan platform. So similar driving characteristics. Yeah, it's a Mercedes-Benz, and I think you don't want to be brand loyal. It's never good to be brand loyal or just assume that the fancy brand builds the nicest cars. But I've found in all my years of reviewing vehicles that Mercedes builds some impressive products from a design and usability and functionality and performance standpoint. So the GLC, and I believe that's been recently redesigned, certainly worth considering. And there's a coupe version of the GLC, just like there is when it comes to the X3 and Q5. There's also the Mercedes-Benz GLB, which I've always kind of viewed as a cheaper option from Mercedes-Benz. It's a compact SUV. It's built on Mercedes-Benz front-wheel drive platform though, so I think it's a platform that was designed to be padded with profit margin for Mercedes-Benz. So I think as a consumer, if you want something premium, I think you'll be better served by the GLC. If you just want the Mercedes-Benz emblem on your vehicle, the GLB will certainly scratch that itch, and I can't help but think though that that's kind of why, that's kind of the only reason it exists. But I've reviewed one and I thought it was fine. It just it's kind of like a really nice Honda CR-V, whereas the GLC is like a true kind of luxury, more traditional luxury performance SUV. And then finally, the last vehicle on this list, the Porsche Macan. I've driven the Macan. I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and drove it through the Scottish Highlands years ago, but it was the current generation Macan, not the most updated one. What surprised me the most about that vehicle, I always assumed that it was just a really nice Audi Q5 because it shares its basic platform with the Q5, but I was pleasantly surprised. To me, that vehicle felt like a true Porsche, and I am very sensitive to automakers simply just putting an emblem on a vehicle and attaching all kind of branding to it in a way to attach perceived value. That didn't seem to be the case with the Macan. That is a real Porsche product, and very, very intriguing. If cost was no concern, that would probably be my favorite vehicle on this list. It's available with all kinds of different performance trim levels, although it does come in a base trim with a turbocharged 4-cylinder. It just starts at like probably like 60 or 70K with that base engine. Either way, a lot of money to fork over. That vehicle is priced above anything else on this list. Speaking of price, out of everything I mentioned here, the most entry-level options like the Mazda CX-50, say like the Buick Envision, Lincoln Corsair, they start in the high 30s, low 40s. At the core of this list, you're looking at probably like $55,000 for a well-optioned compact luxury SUV, like say the Lexus NX or I don't know, Volvo XC60. And then at the high end, so for like a performance-oriented trim of the BMW X3 or certainly like a Porsche Macan S or Macan Turbo, you're looking at $85,000 to $100,000 plus. So this is a pretty broad segment. There are a lot of vehicles on this list here, but again, it's the segment that probably has the most appeal for the greatest number of at least luxury shoppers these days. So yeah, that's a long-winded, we're at 18-minute plus overview of the current compact luxury SUV segment as it stands here. So I'm sure you disagree with a lot of what I just said. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. I don't think I missed any. Hope I didn't miss any. But yeah, that's the compact luxury SUV segment here in 2023. Thank you for watching.